All right. Some of your guys' comments are pretty funny. Hey, folks. Tonight we're gonna riff. And tonight I've got can you guys hear me okay? Is everything good? Hey, would be nice. Hey, Oscar, Dan, P Joe, Zen Jammin. Welcome. Micro Herb, Daniel. How you guys doing? Can you hear me okay? Hey, Jim. Brought biscuits. You should bring fries or you should bring mashed potatoes. That's the kind of gravy. That's my kind of gravy. My kind of gravy is Canadiana, poutine. Poutine gravy or my wife's comfort food, turkey, chicken, mashed potatoes, that kind of stuff. That's my stuff. That's my kind of gravy. Um, good. You guys can hear me good. Right on. So I don't really plan these streams much these days. I'm actually planning more of the Twitter spaces that I'm going to be doing because I'm lining up guests and whatnot. And I got some good ones. And tonight at 8 p.m., so right after this stream, we're going to jump over to X or Twitter and talk to Ben Falk. And Ben Falk is a pretty wicked permaculture designer, consultant. And we're going to talk about firewood. We're going to go deep into firewood. So that's what we're doing tonight. And tonight on this one, so that's after this. But tonight, I just kind of I put some stuff that in the title. That's pretty much sometimes when I think of what I want to do in a stream, what I want to talk about, I try to just put my summation in the title, and that's my notes. Very rarely do I ever have notes. Sometimes I have things that I want to pull from, and sometimes I'll make notes if I want to really get into something and really make a point. But tonight, this stream is pretty much the title: predictive programming and destabilization and inflation. 2024 is going to be lit. Hey, thanks for the super chat there, Derek. Um, and I'll get some of you guys' questions too. Also, if you're a From the Field member, let me pull those up. I am going to do questions tonight. Matthew set up my video for people to comment on. And so there we go. Every Wednesday in December. There you go. He did it. And so and I think he just did this today, unfortunately. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff in there already. Oh no, this is no, it's not updated. So if you guys are From the Field members and you don't want to super chat me, I can you'll guaranteed get your question answered there. Um but yeah, tonight I'm just going to riff on some stuff. I got some, I don't know, just some funny observations that I've been making lately and things that I've been seen and thinking of and what's coming and whatnot. And I wanted to kind of riff on that a little bit. But Darren had a super chat here. Thanks, Darren. Curtis, have you watched that video on the convention/conference investment from Linus I sent last week? No. Where did you send that to me? Did you put that in the No, put me I'll keep an eye on the chat here. Put it in here now and I'll save it. No, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched much. We were out of town yesterday and went to Nelson. I mean, and you guys are in the Kootenays and bought a leek. I didn't plant leeks last season. I already kind of regret it. I planted way too much last year and then I just didn't want to plant any this year. But I bought a leek for $9. A leek, one leek. Granted, it was this thick. It was a good size leek, but the leek was $9. $9 for a leek. I mean, the inflation right now in Canada is absolutely bananas, and yeah, it's just out of control. And I don't know how the average Canadian is going to continue. Like I was down, if any of you guys live in Nelson, and I used to live in Nelson, actually. I used to I went to music school there, Selkirk College. And I've been a member of the Kootenai Co-op there for 20 years. And anyways, um, I see all these people shopping there, and I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the prices, and I'm just looking at people, and I'm going, I'm having a hard time affording this stuff. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And thank God that we grow most of our own produce. And so we don't really have to buy produce much. If we do, it's like lemons and bananas. Um, and so, and our meat we buy in big bulk amounts. Like we buy 6 months of meat at a time. We have our own chickens too, and our own eggs. So we grow a lot of our own food, as many of you know, but we still have to buy food like most people. And I'm just shocked at the price of things lately. It's absolutely shocking. Um, and I'll get more into that shortly. I'm able to answer some of you guys' questions real quick. Oh, Daniel says, signed up for Ben Falk's course. Can you provide the link to your ex interview with Falk tonight? Totally. Let's pull that up. Who listen? I'm curious. Did any of you guys listen to that? I know I get comments all the time. People on YouTube saying, "Oh, I'm not on Twitter. I don't want to be on Twitter." But I'm telling you, Twitter is becoming the coolest social media. It's just getting better. It's getting better and better. And I listened to that Twitter space with Elon Musk and Alex Jones and all that, and it was pretty damn cool. And so I've been listening to more of these spaces lately, and I really actually enjoy it as a format. I was listening to one this morning or today with James O'Keefe and a bunch of other people. He's blowing the whistle on IBM, and it's just a cool platform. And so I'm keen on it. And I like too how it's not as stringent as YouTube is in many ways. One is that it doesn't have a completely fascist copyright system, so I could actually play music, because I'm kind of stoked to open up my show with music. I love music, and so that's what I'm going to do every space. But yeah, to Daniel's link here, I'm going to get that. Here we go. So I like to open up with music, and yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So here is that link. So if you're not, and you know what? Thanks for the reminder there, Daniel. I'll actually, I'll put it in here a few more times. So at 8 o'clock, that's where we're going to be, is in Twitter Spaces. I'll open up with some music. I got some new, I got a new jazz album that I'm really into. Joe Chambers, going to open up with a Joe Chambers track. And then I'll talk about our guest a little bit. I'll introduce him, and then I'll bring him in Ben Falk. And then we'll talk for about an hour, maybe a bit more, and then we'll take some questions. You guys can call in. And so we had a great time last time. Actually, that sort of reminds me. I'll be right back. I have to. What happened last week is my timer on my Wi-Fi turned off. That's why that stream got broken up. So I will be right back. Smash the like. Let me know if you guys are stoked. Let me know what you're thinking. Maybe give me some ideas on what you want me to riff on, but I am going to riff on these 3 things that I put in the title, but I'll be right back because I just want to make sure my Wi-Fi doesn't turn off again. There we go. And hey, Mark. Um, so some announcements off the top of my head. I'm going to be on AlphaCast tomorrow with Mike and Bear. Love those guys. Just love those guys. They are. It's always thick gravy too, because those dudes are hardcore. And So that's one thing. Another thing that I'm planning right now, I'm planning a bunch of stuff for for the summer season. I'm actually going to open up my homestead, believe it or not, to a very small audience, and you'll have to buy your ticket first before I tell you where I live. But I do live in southern BC, I'll say that much. So I'm planning a number of events. Before I launched from the field and all that, I used to just do events all the time. I actually made the vast majority of my income for, I don't know, it was probably 2016, 2017, 2018. The vast majority of my income was from just doing public events and consulting, which I'm doing more of now. Um, but I'm doing some events on the homestead. And so I'm going to do right now, I'm planning two things. Um, One is there's going to be, and there'll be announcements of this. I'm going to have a new website up soon. It's just going to be more updated. You can still go to the urbanfarmer.co if you want to reach out to me about consulting or whatever. I had an issue with my emails. I fixed that. Some people were trying to reach out to me for consulting, sorted that out. So that's all good. And so you can still reach me there if you just go to the urbanfarmer.co. The website's more about my book and that whole thing. But I am going to do more of an updated website about, my off-grid stuff and what I'm doing now. And so I'll have more information about this stuff as it comes out more and as I kind of firm up exactly how it's going to go. But going to do two different types of events on my homestead this summer because it's finally at a stage where I can actually tour people here and they can learn a lot. It's been 3 years in the making. Our house it still isn't done, but that doesn't matter. You're not coming here to get a tour of my house. So, what we're going to do is there's going to be like a 4-hour tour, and then it'll be followed by like there's a couple different restaurants in the area that I might be able to just book, and we'll basically spend an afternoon together, and then we can all go out and have dinner and have some drinks and shoot the shit and whatnot. I might do that every month in June, July, August, and September, but it'll just be it's a 1 day event, half day event in June, July, August, and September. And then I'm going to do a 2 day, call it mastermind event. And right now no, I might do two of them. I might do one in late June and another one it would be late August. And that will be an event that basically I'll teach you everything I know. Whatever you want to know, I'll teach you. So if you've come to my content for a number of years and you've heard me talk about certain things, and I talk about things that I say, oh, there's some things that I won't say publicly that that are more conducive to private conversations. That would be the venue for that such thing. And so how I'm going to structure that event it'll be 2 full days. It'll be catered. My wife and some of our other family will be making food. We'll all be from the farm, and it'll be just 2 full days with me, basically 2 full days and night. Well, 2 days, yeah, and evenings basically. And so it'll be whatever you want to learn from me that you've seen me do, whether it's stuff on the homestead, whether it's stuff I've talked about that I've learned about Canadian law or whatever. That's going to be the place to do that. So yeah, that'll be that's what I've got in the works. And I did mention last week, I got a bit of this cold right now. My kids and I and my wife all get colds at the same time every year. And so my kids seem to take most of it for us though. And then our colds are just these mild, weird colds that ever since the whole COVID thing, I just don't really get sick. I've never been sick like that again, whether I didn't take a PCR test to know not that it works anyways, but I don't get sick really like that anymore. But and so last week I was talking about planning this conference type thing, it's kind of a conference / festival. And I'm not going to say any names yet, but I've got some pretty awesome people that have confirmed. And it's looking like it's going to be at first. I went back and forth. I was like, oh, at first it was going to be 2 days. And then I was going, oh, no, let's do 5 days. Cause I had a lot of speakers that I reached out to said yes. And so I was like, wow, well, let's do 5 days. But then, I spent a lot of time crunching the numbers, and it's just like, dude, it's it's crazy. And I don't want to go broke doing this kind of thing. So it's going to be 3 days. It's going to be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's going to be totally a freedom and solutions orientated event. Well, there'll be speakers and a lot of time to socialize and hang out, because these things really are all about networking. It's really all about rubbing shoulders with people. Conferences, I've always been that way with conferences. I was always hanging out in the lobby and stuff. So it's going to be like that. And yeah, it's going to be in BC. And most of the speakers will be Canadian and regional, though there might be some exceptions to that. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's on my radar lately. And yeah, feel free to reach out if any of that interests you. Oh, another one from Darren here. Have you thought about doing a questionnaire on top of the down payment to filter people for the tours and conventions? Absolutely. Yeah. The price point will also filter a lot of people out too, though. But yeah, absolutely, dude. But I find, I've done events for a long time. It's actually what I was saying earlier, that's actually what I did for when when I moved on from farming, and I was doing this all during my farming too. But when I moved on from there officially, or it was kind of in 2016, I was able to leave the farm. I didn't have to be there all the time. I had people that were helping me. I was just doing events, and yeah, we did all kinds of stuff like that. But I always found that the price point for filtered people out. And I don't think my name is big enough where I have a lot of fanfare or, I don't know, unsavory people. Honestly, I've taught in person. It's got to be thousands of people now, just traveling to, 3 or 4 different countries and all over the US and doing all that for as many years as I did. And yeah, you see those archetypes of people in the workshops. There's the person who sits at the front and knows everything and wants to tell everybody everything, and everybody's annoyed by them. You always get a little bit of that, but it's manageable. But I don't really worry too much about sketchy people, because it's just not so much. I'm not big enough to attract that. And not to say that I can't. But I also don't really have fear about those kinds of things. But yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying, Darren. And yeah, there will be some kind of way of doing that, because the events are going to be small. Like the tours, I'll only be able to take 30 people at a time here, max. And I know a lot of times it's couples. And we'll also have childcare too. We'll be able to have my wife and some other helpers in our sort of homeschooling, unschooling community here that will be able to help with that. So people can bring their kids and they don't have to pay. And we'll just charge them something for looking after their kids and food a bit or something, but they won't have to pay a ticket price or anything like that. And I'm trying to structure the conference around that way too. I'm trying to make it totally family orientated and just create incentives for family, but also have to just look at the numbers too, right? So that's kind of some big considerations there. So sometimes when I look at your snowshoes provide, this will be in the summer, dude. No snowshoes. Studio 55 FRG says, get on Michael Malice's podcast. I'd love to talk to Michael Malice. I have no connection to him though. So, if you got a connection, or you can, pull on his chain to get me on there, I'd love to. He's an interesting guy. I'd love to talk to him. Yeah, I'm kind of doing more of the podcast circuit right now, I guess you could say. Just got more time in the winter. I enjoy talking to people. And so you can expect more of that from me for sure. I've been doing a lot of podcasts recently. And yeah, looking at going back down to Texas, try it. And it should be fine this year. But in April, I think I might be going down to Texas. And I'm actually posting on, I'm posting on band.video now. So I've got just talking to Rob Dew at InfoWars. So I'll be posting at band.video or infowars.com. I'll be posting there now too. Kind of stoked about that. Always wanted to make the connection with those guys. And so my good buddy Dan Dix from Press for Truth made that connection. And so, yeah. Keith says, Mike Adams. Dude, I'd love to talk to Mike Adams. I've had no luck getting in touch with him though. So I'd love to talk to him as well. So yeah, if you guys want to, you know, push on people to get them to ask me to come on their podcasts, please do. Please do. And I'll talk to anybody. I talked to a couple of young guys a couple of days ago, called a podcast called Wyoming Based. And these guys are great. They were awesome. And we had a really, really good conversation. And so I'll go on whoever's podcast. It's all good. I love talking to people. So yeah, people are just tripping on the Elon Musk thing. It's so funny with the Elon Musk thing because it's I mean I put out a video this week basically saying don't follow idols. And I echoed that on Twitter like 5 different posts. Don't don't get hung up on people and make heroes and don't worship people. And so I said that in my video. Yet people are still angry that I have a Tesla and that I'm not constantly talking about how Elon Musk is the Antichrist. Though I did say that in that video, though I don't know that. I can't prove that. It has crossed my mind. But people get it's so funny how people get so angry about your opinion on an individual. Who cares? Who fucking cares? Like, people. It's funny because people. It's often the people who get so angry about you saying, "Well, maybe it isn't all that bad." Or I've been defending Alex Jones lately because I legitimately don't think Alex Jones is some kind of CIA asset. I've looked at all the evidence that, well, not evidence. I've looked at all the stuff that people say about him, and I just don't see anything concrete. But I also have a lot of good friends who have known Alex for 10, 20 years. And they say, yeah, he's nuts because he's a big ego and he's a big personality. But that kind of comes with the territory when you're a frontiersman. It's like Bill Mollison talked about with weeds, is that the frontier of nature is often really thorny because it has to be. And so people are the same way. People like Alex Jones who are trailblazers and who do crazy shit to expose powerful individuals often have hardened personalities and often struggle with ego. And that's the struggle of a lot of men. James O'Keefe is the same thing. James O'Keefe is apparently a pretty awkward dude to work with. But look what he does, So, but all these people who are sitting and ragging on me about the fact that I drive a Tesla or whatever, what I say to them is, well, who's the CEO of the company of the car you drive? Are you really concerned about what they're saying and what they're doing? Probably not. What about the CEO of the company of food you bought at the grocery store yesterday? Probably not. So it's people set all these precedents, but then don't follow through logically to go, well, maybe I should apply that same logic across the board equally. But people don't. They just pick their battles. And I think often what it actually comes from is that the people who are accusing me of worshiping Elon Musk, which is absolutely ridiculous, they're actually the ones worshiping Elon Musk. They're actually the ones in an inverse way, but they're actually the ones that are obsessing about an individual, obsessing about an idol, because in your mind, all these people are these big unattainable characters that you see in Hollywood movies or you see on mainstream media, and you don't see them as people. And that's maybe the difference between myself and some of the people that are commenting and getting angry about things that I say about Elon Musk is because I don't worship him as an individual, as an idol. I just see him as a guy. He's a, you know, you can say lots of good things and lots of bad things about him. He's certainly a super productive individual, who's been able to do a lot of things. And so that's it. I don't really go to sleep thinking about it. I don't really care. But I do get annoyed when people are trashing good truthers. Like Alex Jones is a good truther. You know, I've been listening to Alex for 20 years. I stopped for many years. But I kind of started listening to him again during the scamdemic, and he's bang on, right? So you can talk all the trash you want about him and say that he's Bill Hicks and all this ridiculous stuff, but there's just no concrete evidence for it. So, you know, it's I don't know, it's funny. It's like I can make it, and it's kind of what it comes down to is you can't say anything without somebody having something to say about it, really. So I'm kind of just starting to not care, and I don't really care, but I do read the comments. I do read the YouTube comments. I can't really read all of them, but I do read them, and it's funny. It's funny. Um, Elon was a great young leader for the WEF 2008. Okay. You know, the thing is with all that stuff is that people get invited to these things. And when you're early on in your career, you say yes to a lot of things. If people really wanted to dig dirt on me, I'll tell you where you can dig dirt on me if you want, and it won't move the needle in any way. But you could apply the same thing, the same logic that you just did to Elon with that comment about, oh, he was a young leader at the World Economic Forum. You could apply it to me on a way smaller scale because I'm not him. But I spoke at all kinds of sustainable development conferences for years. I was a poster boy for them. And so does that mean that I'm a globalist? Doesn't now, because I'm not, and I don't support it. But I got wrapped up in that stuff when I was early in my career because I was a lefty and I was motivated by collective action. And I was motivated by the state doing things to save the environment. And I was motivated by that. So I was speaking at all kinds of universities and going to cities all over the US and Canada and speaking at sustainable development conferences, literally. So you could go and apply the same thing to me and say, oh, look at Curtis. He spoke at this sustainable development conference. Look at all these speakers that were there. Yeah, I did. I'm not proud of it, but I wouldn't change it. It was part of my journey, and I was associated with things that I'm not proud of now, but you know, so what? People change. So that doesn't mean anything. Um, a lot of people who consider themselves truthers, and I'm one. I consider myself a truther or a truth seeker, whatever you want to call it. Um, don't apply logical principles across the board. They just pick favorites all the time. It's really annoying. And you see all these kind of fly by night truthers who all came out during the COVID thing. It's like all these truthers came out during there. And I guess it's a good time to be a truther and get stuff out there because people were looking for answers, and all the power to them. But a lot of these ones, they just they just they just parrot and do the same things the mainstream media does. They just pump out stuff that are it's a lot of half truths. It's just like it's like the stuff with Alex Jones is a perfect example. A lot of people just keep, I put a challenge out on Twitter. I said, what did I say here? I'll pull it up. I said, the burden of proof is not he who makes the claim. I've said that. You've probably heard me say that hundreds of times. in these live streams over the years. The burden of proof is on he who makes the claim. All these fly-by-night truthers who want to call everyone controlled opposition constantly fail to bring forth any substantial evidence. If you're going to accuse Alex Jones, bring some evidence. And there's 26 comments on there. There's 8 retweets. It's got pretty good engagement. And nobody has substantial evidence. People are sharing BitChute links, and that's evidence. That's not evidence. If you want to win an argument, or you want to convince me of something, you need to bring it forth. You can't just throw a link. That's what the mainstream media does. That's exactly what they do. That's what the New York Times does. That's what the Atlantic does. That's what CNN does. Don't be like them. Be consistent, be logical, be honest. Don't share bullshit. I'm getting kind of tired of it with these truthers, because there's just so many half truths. And it's like, this is going to connect into what I wanted to talk about with that movie. If some of you guys saw that Netflix movie, I never watch movies. I haven't watched a Hollywood movie in, I don't know what was the last movie I watched, years. My wife can never stay awake long enough. But we did watch it because a friend of mine, Odessa, reached out to me, and she's like, you got to see this movie. It's pretty crazy. And so I watched it, and yeah, it's called Leave the World Behind, produced by Obama, Big Mike and Barack. And it's crazy. But anyways, where does this connect to what I was talking about, is that people just get so far down the rabbit hole that you get to this stage, especially if you're alone. It's tough being a truther if you're alone. I empathize with people who are single, or maybe they're empty nesters, or whatever. I empathize with them, because it's not easy being alone. But if you're a truther and you're alone, it can really be dangerous in a lot of ways for your own self, because the information that you'll find when you're on that journey of looking at these things is quite, shocking and horrific. And it's not easy to cope with. Like, you find out about, satanic ritual abuse and child sex trafficking and all that stuff. It's dark. It's a really dark rabbit hole. And some people never come out of it, or people who, first learn about chemtrails, and then they're afraid to go outside, and they're peeking through the blinds. And I literally have known people like that in my life. And it gets pretty dark. But the thing is when you spend so much time in your own head, especially online, and you're assuming that online relationships are relationships, which they're not really, not in the same way, not in the same meaningful way, though they can be meaningful, but they're just different. We all know that. I don't think it's controversial to say, but you can just get into your psyche, and I think it can drive you crazy. And it does drive you crazy. When I first, was listening to all these guys, Jordan Maxwell and Bill Cooper and all those guys in the old days of the truther stuff, with you'd get these old DVDs, or you'd get DVD copies of truther videos like Loose Change and stuff like that, or Esoteric Agenda. That my dad gave me that on a DVD. That was one of the first truther things my dad gave me, was a copy of Esoteric Agenda. And it had a bunch of Bill Cooper and Jordan Maxwell stuff on it too. My dad gave me that 20 years ago. And anyway, so I'd been down that rabbit hole, and when you go down there, it's dark. It's really, really dark. And if you don't have somebody to share it with, it makes it more difficult. But if you're online and you're just you're just raging on people who aren't as hardcore as you about it, you get into this sort of paranoid delusion where, Media Bear in the house, love Media Bear. You get into this paranoid delusion where everybody becomes controlled opposition. And I've been trying to think of this scale that people are on, that, you're like a 0, you're truther level 1 or truther level 5, and getting to level 5 isn't necessarily a good thing, because sometimes you get so deep into it that everybody becomes controlled opposition. And then it's a really, really tough thing to it just becomes difficult to perceive anything in the world and see any good in the world if everybody's controlled opposition. And it's really, really it's really dark. And so I would suggest not going there. And I would suggest if you don't want to go there, or if say you have some friends that are maybe need a bit of guidance or help with all this, is look for real evidence, look for real stuff. Hearsay and interpretations don't count because they wouldn't count in a court of law. They wouldn't count in a court in front of your jury of your peers. They wouldn't count. Like all these things with Alex Jones saying that he's Bill Hicks and all that, none of that stuff would stand in a court. None of it. And so I think we should be I think we should be better than the mainstream media. I think we should be better than our adversaries and elevate ourselves to truth. If you're going to be a truther, don't lie and don't perpetuate lies, because a lot of truthers aren't lying intentionally, but they're lying by association if they're repeating things that are bullshit. And it's true that some things seem like bullshit at one point, but then come out later to be true. And that's fine. Correct the record. You can always correct the record. That's one thing I love about statute law, is that you can always correct the record. So there's really no downside to ever writing a letter or trying something, because you can always correct the record. You can always go back. And I think in the sort of cultural milieu of the world and our sort of I guess maybe fear of social ostracism, you can correct the record to some degree too, especially these days with the news cycle being as fast as it is. You can move on from one thing to the next pretty quick. Very few people go through a total about face and don't come back, you know. As long as you're honest, there's some guys like Owen Benjamin who just continue to tell lies and will do that forever. And they'll always have like a cult following that will always follow them. It's the same with all this stuff. There's the true believers that will go along with it no matter what. They'll just, his cult is a perfect example. He can say anything, and his true believer cults will believe anything he says. Whereas most people are just like, that's retarded. What are you talking about? Why would you say something so stupid? But if you have enough of a cult following, you can ride that for a long time. And bringing this into the more macro stuff that's what the New World Order is doing. And that's what they will do. And that's why their PSYOP and their predictive programming and stuff that they're pulling right now will run for a long time, because many, many people have been believing a lot of big lies for a long time. And it's really hard to unwind a lie. Like, I think I'm pretty sure I've told this story before, but I was really into the climate change thing. Like it was at the time when I started my urban farm by bike and all that. Climate change as an existential crisis that could only be solved by big intervention through the government and banks was the only like it was the thing that I was most motivated for to do, was make a difference in my carbon footprint, which is a total joke and total waste of time and exercise and futility. But that was my motivation. And when I started listening to more, I got really wrapped up in Ron Paul when he was running in 2008. And he introduced me to a lot more libertarian stuff. I was into truther stuff many, many years before that, but I never really got political. Because even with Alex Jones, when I listened to early Alex Jones back in the day, he was less political too, because I guess in that space, in that truther space at that time, the establishment politics were conservative. It was neocons, right? It was George W. Bush and all that. And he was adamantly opposed to Bush. And so I never really, I mean, I was a lefty really, but I just didn't really get that into politics. Though I did vote for the Green Party and the NDP party and all that when I was younger, but I didn't think about it as much as I do now. I was more just interested in things that were esoteric or things that were hidden. I didn't really care about the politics so much. And I don't, and I've come full circle as I don't care about the politics now. I just care about the solutions and ways through. But, yeah, back then, none of it was political. It was, but it wasn't in the same way as it is now, because then when everything switched to the left, and Alex Jones did the Obama Deception, which is a great movie. Then it really started to expose all these liberal ideas. But my case in point is that you can change yourself, you can change your opinion, and I would encourage you to do so. It's not a bad thing to do. I think a lot of people feel the need to live and die by the sword, as they say, is that it's just like, dude, if you're wrong, just be wrong. I was wrong about Jordan Peterson. Who cares? Big deal. Maybe I'm wrong about some other things. I hope I am, because it's really difficult to always just be right. I would say it's next to impossible. And if you can learn based on new information and adjust your opinion, then that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That shows growth. So that's kind of, yeah, my thoughts on that. So that movie, okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I think the mainstream dialectic is trying to butter us up to this idea of collapse, because we're in collapse. And I said three things in this title. I said predictive programming, destabilization, and inflation. So the predictive programming is just off the charts. And it has been for a long time, but maybe I haven't noticed it as much because I don't watch I don't watch movies. I don't really I'll check out a documentary every now and then or something. But I don't actively watch like Hollywood movies. So I don't pay attention to it as much. If I get any of that content, I get it from somebody like Jay Dyer. I'll listen to Jay Dyer and he'll break down some dialectic in some esoteric Hollywood movie or something, he has that book, Esoteric Hollywood. And he talks about that kind of stuff. And so that's how I get most of it. But I just kept seeing people talk about this movie. So it's called Leave the World Behind. And it's got Ethan Hawke in it, Julia Roberts. They're two actors that I recognize because they're more from my era in the 90s. Ethan Hawke was in that great sci-fi movie Gattaca. You ever see that one? It's a dystopian sci-fi. It's really good. Really, really good movie. Almost prophetic to where we're going. But he was in it, and Julia Roberts, and then Kevin Bacon. Well, he was the only other actor that I recognized in it. And the Kevin Bacon is this prepper. And so the basic premise of the movie is that there's some kind of not an EMP, or there's something that basically just knocks out the power grids in the city. Just there's some kind of, it's a cyber attack. That's what it is. It's a cyber attack. And this is interesting too, because remember that cyber polygon document that the World Economic Forum put out not too long ago? I read it when I was on when my dad was dying in the hospital. I read that whole document and I was just like, holy fuck, this is what they want to do. Cyber polygon, check it out if you haven't already. But this movie is basically talking about cyber polygon. What would happen in America and the West in general if there was a big comprehensive cyber attack, as Klaus Schwab puts it. And yeah, it's kind of what you would expect to happen. But the movie is really, there's this scene that's really, really telling in the movie where I won't spoil it for you. It is actually, have to say I was quite entertained by the movie. The music was really dark and there was a lot of weird shit in it. And I don't get offended if Hollywood does dumb things because that's what Hollywood does. And there's some of that in there. Like there's this scene where this kid's beating off, and it's like, why would you put that in this movie? Because it had no context. It didn't really serve the story, but they put it in there. I was like, why would you put that in there? But anyways, um, there's this scene where there's this guy, this family with a boy and a girl. I think they're like 12 and 16 or something. Ethan Hawke and Julia Roberts, they're New Yorkers. They live somewhere in New York City, and they go and get an Airbnb in Jersey or something like that, or upstate New York or something like that. It's across the water from Jersey though, because there's a scene in there where you can see across the water and there's a city. So I don't know exactly where it is, but they go get this Airbnb, and then these two people show up at the door, and they're like, "Hey, this is our house. Can we come in?" And they're like, "What the hell are you doing here? We got this off Airbnb." And it is the owners, and they're like, "It's pandemonium in the city. Can we stay here because there's all this stuff going on?" Anyways, the one dude is like some kind of stock. He's some kind of big time stockbroker dude, and they're the two. I think it was him and Julia Roberts are talking. They're listening to jazz or something. They're hanging out, smoking weed, and and he's this guy has got some connections to billionaires, and there's this thing where he says he's like, I used to think that there were all these guys pulling strings, and so they're kind of poking at us. They're kind of poking at the truth community a bit here. And then he's like, but then this one guy told me that, basically there's nobody controlling it. There's just nobody knows what's going on. It's all just chaos, which is total bullshit. But that's the seed that they're planting. That's the programming that they want you to get your head around, because when they do flip this thing, if they do flip this thing, this is how they want it to go. And so there's this scene in there too where there's Ethan Hawke. He's this just total beta male loser. The thing that's really annoying about these movies is how they portray archetypes, and just how the dad, he's not like a Homer Simpson. It's no longer Homer Simpson as the dad. He's like, the masculine kind of idiot. Now it's just, you're like a feminized, just cucked idiot who's useless. And there's a scene in there where he's like trying to save his son from something. I won't give it away. And he's like, "I'm useless. I'm an I'm a useless urban whatever." And it was kind of funny because that's just the truth of most people, especially in cities. But yeah, so there's all this predictive programming, and there's they think it's they're being raided by the Middle East, or it's a cyber attack, or it's some just kind of dirty bomb, nuclear or warfare. They want you to think it's all kinds of stuff. They say, "Oh, it's the North Koreans are attacking us. Oh no, it's Iran attacking us." Nobody knows, right? And that's the kind of interesting predictive programming that was going on in that movie. But yeah, or is it civil war? Because they make some kind of take some shots at conservatives and stuff like that. There's a little comment in there about white people, which was not it's not offending. It's not offensive. And actually, I saw a lot of people in the commentary on this movie get really offended by that. I'm like, why are you getting offended by that? It's kind of realistic, actually. This guy and his daughter, that they're the owners of the house. They're sleeping in the extra room downstairs, and the daughter's, and you can tell she's like a liberal who's just come out through the university indoctrination camps, and she's sitting there going, "Yeah, you can't trust you can't trust these people," kind of thing. It makes a comment like that. But it's actually quite realistic, because that's actually what an urban liberal would say. And the dad was like, "No, what are you talking about? Like he's not into that." Um, but anyways, it was a pretty interesting movie. And yeah, the predictive programming is the real deal. And there's another one coming out now. There's another Civil War Hollywood movie coming out right away. But if you remember, there was a few other movies. I didn't see them, actually. I just saw highlights of them and saw them mentioned in some of the truther media stuff. But there was a couple movies that came out just before COVID that talked about a COVID thing, basically. And so Hollywood has a tendency to do this. They do this predictive programming thing, and you can really go down a rabbit hole on predictive programming. It's quite intense and dark. But they do it all the time, and I think that's what's going on here. Because just look at the general political atmosphere around the world. Look at the economy. Look at the instability, the sort of social unrest. Look at the migrant thing. I just can't get my head around that in the US, how insane that is. And Western Europe. I was watching some videos in Spain the other day, and it was an absolute war zone, or just being raided by all really fit African men. No women, no children, just men, military age men, just pouring into the country. Italy, Spain, all these places. Absolutely crazy. And so you just look at all these things happening, and now we've got this real rise in what's the word, discontent between on the Israel-Palestine issue. And I'm not going to get into that whole thing. I've talked about that the last number of streams. It doesn't matter. But it's used as a wedge issue, just like the drag queen story time is. These things are intentionally put out there to get people fighting. Because one thing that I've learned about the New World Order from just reading their books and their documents and the white papers and all that stuff for as many years as I have is that they're very lazy, in that if they do something, they want to do the least amount of work to achieve it as possible. And that's not always the case. Sometimes they have to do things very direct. But overall, when it comes to manipulating the masses, they do it in a very subtle and passive way over time. And that's what has been happening now. And you go back and listen to the Yuri Bezmenov interview with G. Edward Griffin, that's from 1984. He was talking about it then. And prior to that, the John Birch Society was talking about this in the 50s and 60s. So this infiltration, predictive programming, Bezmenov called it a fourfold strategy of demoralize, destabilize, crisis, and normalize. That was the fourfold strategy on how to break down a civilization without firing a single bullet. And that's kind of what Bezmenov talked about in that thing. But that's what's fully going on. I mean, it's so obvious to anybody that's just paying a little bit of attention. You know, when I was in the Kootenays, and somebody Gervon says Salut from the Slocan Valley. I was in the Slocan Valley yesterday. But when you look at the prices of things, I mean, it's absolute madness. I feel so fortunate that I grow a lot of my own food. I'm on my own land. And I've done okay for myself, that I'm not, struggling to just put food on the table. But my goodness, I mean, the prices of things are insane. And how long can this continue? That's what I wonder is, how long? And I'm mostly just thinking about Canada, because that's my context. That's where I live. And I see that. But I look at the prices of things, and and I know in Canada, the statistics say that the average Canadian carries $30,000 of consumer debt. So that's not including your mortgage. And something like 69% of Canadians live in, is it 69? I forget what the percent, it doesn't matter. But a good amount of Canadians live in mortgaged homes that they mortgage. And that's why it's going to be insane in 2024 when these mortgages start to go up for renewal. But how long can this last? I was talking to an old friend of mine from Montreal the other day, and he was telling me a friend of his who's a fairly well-to-do individual's got like a fairly high-paying job. I mean, high-paying job in the circles that I used to run in Montreal is probably $100,000 a year or less, because everybody in my old clan of musicians are all poor. So somebody who makes that kind of money is considered well-to-do and great. But he was telling me that, she was always the one, or one of their friends that, would pay for drinks, and she had money and stuff like that. And now she's dirt poor because her mortgage payment has doubled. She went and she's got some just classic, 3.5, 4.5, that's what they call them in Montreal, apartment. And she was paying $2,000 a month for her mortgage. And now she's paying $4,000 a month. Like, you just think about the price of stuff on the shelves. And then all of a sudden your rent essentially gets doubled. Like, how are people going to manage that? I know a guy in a Soyuz, it's the most southern town in British Columbia, or at least one of them, biggest southern town in British Columbia, right by the border, was saying that the city of Soyuz just doubled the property tax. Like, what, doubled? How do you do that? No, sorry, not doubled. Increased it by 40%. So not doubled, but 40%. That's a massive 40% increase. You can't do that in anything, but they did it when they're trying to do it, and people are protesting, obviously. But when you think about all these things, you just go, this does not look like this can carry on much longer before there's a breaking point. And then that's, of course, problem, reaction, solution. That's where our solution will be handed on a golden platter to us by our good friends at the UN and the World Economic Forum. And they'll have lots of solutions for us that involve a lot of the things that we've talked about on this stream many, many times. But they are, it looks to me, yes, Pierre says full spectrum domination. Exactly. 5th generation warfare. It's just seed a bunch. It's like Pierre, it's like the permaculture idea of a seed bomb. The New World Order do seed bombs in the sense that they just drop all these seeds everywhere and see what's germinate. I have often said they just throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. And but ever since, call it COVID, though you could make the case that it happened long before this, but I think most people saw it during COVID, is that it was a machine gun assault. It was a fire hose of shit at a wall to see what sticks. And a lot of it stuck, a lot of it didn't. And they're adapting and reorientating their plan as people go for things or not. And they do. I mean, I was talking about controlled opposition earlier, and people's paranoia with that. But there is reason to be paranoid about it. I'm not saying you should be, but controlled opposition is a real thing. Project Mockingbird and all that kind of stuff, like, that's all legit. That's all on the table. That's on the record. And so they do that. They infiltrate groups and media organizations. And I think I've witnessed some of that myself to some degree in the space of, call it, permaculture and sustainability. I mean, definitely in the broad sense of sustainability, but I've seen it in other micro niches as well. Not seen it to say that's that, but suspicion of it, say. And I've said this before, is that what I look for is, I don't necessarily need to have hard evidence of something. I just need to see a pattern. And then if that pattern is enough for me to feel in my heart or in my gut that something's amiss, then I just remove myself from that. And so I look for patterns. And when I see, and this is the thing, is the New World Order doesn't really have, they're not very creative. They really seem to just rip everybody's ideas off, and they don't really do anything new. They kind of seem to do the same things over and over again. But one thing that I think is legit, and you tell me, let me know what you think. Um, but I really think when I look at somebody and I see their eyes, I've talked about this on the stream for years. Um, there's something in that look of people who are dark. There's sunken eyes. There, I mean, think about pretty much all the royal family. Think about a guy like George Soros. Think about a guy like Zygmunt Brzezinski. You ever see him? He's a ghoul. Look at Henry Kissinger. Look at Henry Kissinger's wife. My goodness. She looks like a cracked out version of Roger Waters in a dress. Like it's weird. But you look at these people, right? And I think we have a God given ability to see light and darkness. That it is, they say, there's that saying about the window to the soul is in the eyes. I think it goes like that. But I really, really do believe that. And sometimes, even at a gut level, when I look at some of the people that get confused, get accused of being controlled opposition, like Alex Jones and stuff like that, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Like, so, him, for example, there's no real good evidence that Alex Jones is controlled opposition. There's no good evidence. There's not even, people even say with Tucker Carlson, oh, he had a dad in the CIA. That's not evidence. Try taking that to a court. What's that gonna? That's nothing. That's a nothing burger. But look, like when you look at Tucker Carlson's face, does he really seem like a dark guy? Like I just don't see it. But then look at Ellen DeGeneres. Look at her eyes. She looks dark, right? Um, look at Jeffrey Epstein. Look at Bill Clinton. Look at Hillary Clinton, right? Or please don't look at Hillary Clinton, but there's something there. And I don't know. I like to go with my gut for the most part. But at the end of the day, it's like I said, I tweeted this out earlier too. It's just like, if you're so concerned about the New World Order taking guys like Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and all these guys, they're all part of the new right wing that's all for the New World Order. Then don't invest so much in them. Invest in yourself. All these people who sit there and get angry that I talk about Elon Musk and I mentioned him and I have a car of his and I use Starlink or Twitter or whatever and get so butthurt about that. It's like, well, why are you so obsessed with him? Why are you're the one making the idol, not me. I'm just talking about the product. I'm just talking about some rhetoric. I'm not talking about an idol. I'm not one of these people that idolizes these men. I don't really give a shit at the end of the day. Though I will tell you, I enjoy some of their stuff, right? But I just don't see it with a lot of these people that, yeah, look at Tom Hanks. Exactly. Look at Tom Hanks, man. Like, look at that guy. Paul Romano from Pockets of the Future does a pretty good job of pointing that stuff out. I just can't really watch his content anymore because how many times do I need to see a video about Britney Spears, being a ghoul or whatever? So yeah, that's what I say to that. Okay, here's a funny one. Below says, bro, if you take a mathematical inverse of Jones's message, it's never the Jews. But it's not the Jews. That's retarded. That is retarded. To say it's the Jews is not telling the whole story, for one, and it's not that complicated. And there is no grand conspiracy with Jews. So of course, Alex Jones, if he is saying, I haven't heard him say that, and actually he slams Israel all the time. But Israel isn't the Jews. Like I have friends that are Jewish. They're not in on the conspiracy, dude. I have friends that are from Israel. They're not in on the conspiracy. Saul the baker isn't in on the conspiracy. He's just a guy. Uh, Is there something else in what you're saying? Yeah, it goes a lot deeper than that. Like, let's just be honest, it goes deeper than that. But to say that it's the Jews is retarded. It's just because it's just not true. You're saying, you're making this massive blanket claim that you can't prove, because if you say the Jews, now you have to prove to me that every Jew's in on the conspiracy, and I know you can't do that. And so don't say things that aren't true. Say things that are, at, at least say things, if you're going to make claims, at least say things that you can back up, that you have some burden of proof in. Don't just make a bunch of claims. It's just, and all that stuff about blaming the Jews for everything, that is, in my opinion, that stuff's planted by the ADL. That stuff, that the organizations like the ADL love neo-Nazis. They love that stuff. So that when people get in chats and comment sections, and you just see that, and you go on BitChute, and it's just so prevalent, it's really annoying. I wonder if that stuff just bots. Is it just bots paid for by the ADL? Because that stuff is what makes their entire organization relevant, is by doing that. Because if anybody has done any amount of research into the Khazarians, or a lot of the history that has disappeared, it's really easy to see that it's not the Jews. Sure, a lot of big bankers, most of them are Jewish, but that doesn't mean much, because most NBA basketball players at the top of the game are black. But it's not a conspiracy. It's just an attribute of the race in some way, just like how Germans make the best pianos. Japanese innovated some of the best technology. I mean, if you go back into the history, like Jewish history, and they've been kicked out of a lot of countries, and of course, there's reasons for that. But that doesn't mean that every random Jewish guy is in on some grand conspiracy. It's ridiculous. But they weren't allowed to own property, and so a lot of Jewish people got into finance. And do I trust all that history? Not necessarily, but I don't really put much into it, because it doesn't move the needle in my life. It's just, it's nice to have theories about these things. It's great to look into them and ask questions, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Does it really matter? It's like, for so many years back in my early days being on social media, I'd get in these debates with people about anarchism and stuff, because I like the philosophy of anarchism in many ways. I don't like the idea of the state, but I use the state. So I'm philosophically an anarchist, but I'm more practically a libertarian, because I do use the state. I use it in many different ways. And so there's a juxtaposition in my position, but one is rooted in how the world is and how I can navigate it. And then the other one is rooted in how the world ought to be. And how the world ought to be doesn't fucking matter. Yeah, Media Bear, I agree with you there. I agree with you there. Because it is, yeah, I find it just ridiculous. I just find it hard to believe that I'm even having this conversation about races of people, and having to say it's not all, like, it's so ridiculous. And so, yeah. Mars says Curtis is protecting his bag. He doesn't want to speak to you. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I'm some, like, what is that? I don't even know what that means. What bag? What are you talking about? My bag of weed? Like, what are you talking about? Tell me, because you don't make sense. There's nothing to protect in that regard. I'm not beholden to anybody in that regard. I come on these streams and I say whatever the hell I want. And it's why my channel on YouTube doesn't get any views, is because I started talking about the New World Order, and I don't monetize these streams. You may have noticed I can take super chats and I appreciate them, but I don't monetize most of my videos on YouTube anymore just because I'd rather be able to post there than not. Because when I publish a video that's says the New World Order in the title, nobody else does that, or very few people do that on YouTube. You may have noticed, is because it might screw you over, and it might have for me, though I don't know. I can't prove it. I can't prove why, but if I wanted to protect my money bags or whatever you're referring to, I wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff. I would just be doing urban farming videos. If I all I wanted to do is make money as a content creator, I would have stayed in my original lane and I wouldn't have moved from it. I'd be like that epic gardening guy. I'd be doing that, you know. He's making money, you know. He's making a lot of money making YouTube videos, and he doesn't talk about anything controversial. And that's his right. And all the power to him for doing that. And I hear he's a good guy. But that's just not who I am. I'm too motivated to just speak the truth. It's always been who I am. And so I'm not playing any games there. So, you know, do I want to say dumb shit that is just going to pointlessly offend people? No, of course not. What's the point? You don't, when people say all this stuff about the Jays, um, you don't actually move the needle for your message. You actually just move the ADL's message. I would make the case that all these people who spend so much time hating on Jews are actually just moving the needle for that movement, that Zionist movement, because that's what they need. Look at this. Look at all these anti-Semites. Look at all these white supremacists. That's what they need. Their organization, and Israel too, needs that. It needs to have that boogeyman. So I don't play that game. I don't need to. So do I have any Bigfoot stories? I wish I did. I've got an Ogopogo story though. Have I already told you guys my Ogopogo story? You know what Ogopogo is? Ogopogo is the Loch Ness monster of the Okanagan Lake, and it's been sort of an urban legend for my entire life. And uh, and there's been all these sightings. And remember, there was a show in the early '90s called Unsolved Mysteries. For any of you '90s kids, you might remember that show. They did an episode in Kelowna about it, and they had all these experts, and they put a submarine under, and they couldn't find it. But anyways, um, it was I was mountain biking one time in Kelowna up on Knox Mountain. I used to be really big into mountain biking because I used to live up there, and so I just go right out of my backyard and just rip on the mountain. And Kelowna is a very beautiful place, um, geographically. This city is turning into a liberal hellhole like most cities, but it is a beautiful place. And it's a really neat, unique climate because there's this valley, which is all a semi-arid desert, but then it's surrounded by boreal forest. And so it creates this really neat microclimate. Anyways, it's very beautiful on the lake. Anyways, I'm biking down and I get to this lookout point, and I look down and I see this thing in the lake and it's spinning like this. And I'm going, what the hell is that? At first I thought it was a boat because I'm far off the lake. I probably, as the crow flies, I would have been thousands of feet, maybe even a kilometer away. But I was at a really high vantage point and I could look down, and I saw this thing swimming in a circle. And I swear to this day that it was the Ogopogo because I couldn't get my head around what else it could have been. And they say the Ogopogo is this giant carp that lives that this breed of carp that can live hundreds of years long and get really, really big. And maybe that's what it is. But anyways, that's my Ogopogo story. And I saw the Ogopogo, man. And I wasn't high. I was in full sound and mind. I would testify in a court that I saw the Ogopogo, and it was mind blowing. So Somebody mentioned Bigfoot, and that's what got me going on that track. But yeah, it's big, Pierre. It would have been like it would have been at least 100 feet long. Like it was huge, and it was just swimming in a circle. And this is before the days of cell phones. This would have been the year. It wasn't the day. It wasn't before cell phones, but it was before everybody had cell phones, and there was no cameras in them back then. But this would have been either 1999 or 2000. And I saw the Ogopogo, man, and it was mind blowing. So yeah. It's funny. So somebody says A4000T says people are busy calling everyone racist and white supremacist, etc. I don't even pay attention anymore. It means nothing to me. Yeah, I agree. Jim, a sturgeon. That's it. Thank you. A sturgeon. That's probably what it was. Jim's a Kelowna boy, I think. Um, but yeah, that thing about being white supremacists and all that. Truthers do the same thing when they control it, when they call everybody controlled opposition. It's the same. The thing that's been so funny about coming out of the call it the COVID era is that all these people got awake, right? And did they really get awake? I don't know. Just because you don't want to take the shot and can see that the world's run by this banking cartels and all this, it doesn't really necessarily mean you're awake. It just means you can see some things that are fairly obvious. But I think it goes deeper than that, frankly. But all these people that got awake, a lot of the people just got so paranoid. And I wonder if this was a psyop in some ways. They got so paranoid that they turned into what they hated. They kind of went full circle. So all these people during COVID, there was the mainstream normies who were just listening to whatever the CBC said or CNN, and were paranoid and crazy about the masks and all that stuff. And they're pointing fingers at people, and they're angry and they're riled up, and the paranoia was next level. A lot of these truthers who kind of got awake during that time have become that, freaked out about whenever there's chemtrails being sprayed, freaked out about not trusting anybody because you think everybody's controls opposition. People who think their cell phone is recording every single thing that you're talking about, probably is, but does it matter? You know, just paranoid about every single thing, that you kind of come full circle. And I think at the end of the day, that's where the New World Order wants you. They want you in a position where you're living in fear, you're paranoid, you don't trust anybody. Like, this is one thing with truthers that I found crazy over COVID, because you got to know a lot of people during that time. I met more people in person during those 2 years than I have in a long time. And I hadn't, and because I stopped traveling and doing all that, didn't want to take the shot. So, but I met a lot of people because a lot of people were getting together, as they should have been. And it was great. But, you rub shoulders with a lot of people who were kind of, the whole thing brought people together in some ways, which is good. But it also made you mix with people that you might not have mixed, because you're just mixing on the condition of the enemy of my enemy is my ally, or however that goes. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, or however that goes. And so you're just kind of hanging out with these people by default because they don't want to wear a mask and they don't want to take a shot and all that. But you probably would have never hung out with them. And so I got to meet a lot of people that were extraordinarily paranoid, and to the point where I just didn't want to be around a lot of these people because they're just too paranoid, and it's just annoying. And I've been down those rabbit holes. I've read so many of these books and all this old truther stuff that I've been listening to. I've been so far down into it well before COVID, that when COVID came around, I was kind of like, yeah, welcome to the party, happy to have you here. But a lot of people just kept on with this track of paranoia. And because so many truther careers were launched in that time, and maybe rightfully so, at least it needed to happen that way. There's a lot of people that were really fly by night, and there's a lot of content creators who just put stuff out that they don't really have the full context. And in the era of TikTok and that shit, I can't stand TikTok. I hate it. I watch those videos, and even if they're really good, I just go, it just grosses me out. I just don't like short form content like that, especially for subjects such as truth or shit. Um, is that it just, yeah, it just drives me crazy. And so many people just aren't getting it. And so I wonder if that's a big psyop there, in that the New World Order can't really hide the stuff anymore because it's kind of out there, and people are seeing it. And so their strategy is to just let it go with a machine gun assault of information, and let all these things leak and all this kinds of stuff, let all these whistleblowers slide, and then just manipulate the algorithm so that it just keeps people from going the extra way, because they get stuck in the loop of instant gratification content, that they're just on to the next thing. So nobody really goes too far into a certain thing. They're just on to the next thing. And so I wonder if that's, you know, let me know what you think, but that's kind of what I'm witnessing. I'm going to read some of you guys' comments. And if you want me to read it for sure, you can super chat me. Chris P says, I'm not going to lie, I was about ready to run to the woods with my family, more worried about COVID is going to rile up the masses and only get unmasked family in town. Well, dude, I did that. and I have no regrets about it. I ran to the woods. But I don't look at it as in a retreat. I just look at it as seeking a better life. But I did that, and I have no regrets about that. It's probably the best thing we ever did as a family. So that's not a bad thing. But it's, you know, if the paranoia is disrupting your life, if it's hurting your relationships with people, you know, it's not always a good thing. Oh, Steven's in the house. Everyone is a truther now, only been 5 minutes, but think they know everything in the and muddy the water. I know exactly. Like Stephen Cornett, he's been a truther for a long time too. I remember hanging out with Stephen down in San Diego at his original urban farm, and we were riffing on this kind of stuff. And so, you know, a lot of people came out during COVID, and I think that's good in a lot of ways, but in some ways, that's just been another psyop to just corral people. And I could see how people could see or might say that you know, what's going on right now with Elon Musk and Twitter could be that, because you could make the case, though I have no evidence for it, but I could see how you could make a case just on observation that it seems like everybody's being corralled onto Twitter right now. I am, because it's just a better platform. It's better in every way. And so, and also YouTube is disincentivizing people like us out. Like, you know, Doug and Stacy got demonetized. A lot of other channels I know are just getting hammered. They're just getting strikes, and, you know, they're seemingly destroying everything and moving things into a consolidated way. But is it that way? You know, I mean, I think things are always more complicated than you think they are. I mean, I think that's just universally correct in your life. Every time you think you know something, the more information you find out, you talk to other people, you get different angles on the perspective, you let time settle your opinion a little bit, and then you come back, you often change your perspective. And that's how we find the truth. And so I think it's really easy to speculate about this, that, and the other. It's really easy to call Elon Musk the Antichrist. It's really easy to say well, Tucker Carlson is a shill. It's really easy to make accusations like that about anybody because it doesn't really require anything from you. And in this day and age, with the news cycle and the way social media works, you can just say anything you want and nobody really holds you to account. So there's no more filter on opinions anymore. And that's good and bad. It just kind of is what it is. But it's created this environment where people just say shit all the time without thinking about it. And I see it nonstop with people. And so many people are wrong. And I mean, and I have to tell you, it's really surreal for me to see people saying things about that about me. Like it's a trip. Like there's a few haters now on my channel who are really convinced that I'm a Freemason. And it's surreal because I went down the rabbit hole on Freemasonry. It was one of the first things that I got into when I was learning about all the esoteric shit. And I'm not a Freemason, and I don't even know anybody. Actually, I have met a guy that's a Freemason. I had an old friend too who was into David Icke 30 years ago, and then he went and joined the Freemasons, and now he's tweeting "Build Back Better," which is weird. But no, I mean the Freemason thing. I got into that so long ago, and is just morbidly disgusted by it and the oaths that they have to take, and it's madness. It's a pretty dark organization. I mean, most Masons have no idea what they're part of because you don't really get revealed anything till you get up to the higher degrees, and then we have to swear these oaths that are pretty crazy, which you'll protect murderers and child molesters, and that's how these organizations do the things that they do, is because people are compartmentalized. And that's, I don't know, did anybody see that story? I think it was CBC did, is, oh, science proves that conspiracy theories are bullshit. And the guy's whole thesis was, how could it be so possible that they could pull off such a grandiose scam without all these leaks coming out? And he has no idea about compartmentalization. It's like, dude, you have no idea. And that's another example. No idea what they're talking about, but he's an expert because he has a degree in this, that, and the other. And so his opinion is worth something, while he's not even addressing the elephant in the room, which is compartmentalization. All of these things, the Freemasons, whatever it is, the Rosicrucians and the Knights of Malta and all these groups, they all function on compartmentalization. And compartmentalization is so easy to prove to anybody who has worked in any kind of corporate job, been involved in academia, is an administrator or a teacher, has worked in any type of profession or industry that has a lot of sectors, in that everything is on a need to know basis. Or even if you worked in the military, you understand this, because an organization can't function if everybody knows everything. It's just not possible, because it's not practical for people on the bottom who are, say, doing the grunt work to know or be privy to the same information that people on the top do that sit in the board of directors. I mean, come on, it's common sense. It's just easily observable that human beings need to compartmentalize themselves, for better or worse. I mean, of course, when we're talking about all these secret societies that do control the world, that's one thing. But when you're talking about just like on the day to day, it's so easy to see that human societies need compartmentalization. Otherwise, well, they don't necessarily need it, because I think human societies are too big anyways. And I think we should all be living in tribes of 100, and that's a whole other conversation, but 100 people or less. But basically, for Western civilization to exist in the way it has, it needs compartmentalization. I'm not justifying that, but I'm just saying that's how it is. And so how can you not see that it's actually very easy to compartmentalize people, because they don't have a reason or a need to know, as they say. You don't have a need to know, so you don't know. And yeah. Humanity Lane, hey, thanks for the £5. Test your preps to the stress point, that way you can see what needs improvements. Absolutely, that's a really good point. Um, that's what I would say too to people with like, but weakest links is, addressing the weakest links. One thing I would say too on the prepper stuff is if you buy a bunch of prepper food, like, you buy those Heaven's Harvest and stuff like that. I never bought that stuff because we just buy bulk. We order most of our stuff from a company called Organic Matters that's just in, is it south of Nelson? Yeah. Um, and we just put all that stuff together ourselves. But people who aren't as good at a cook as my wife might buy stuff that's more prepackaged, and that's totally fine. But what you want to do with that stuff is cycle it. You actually want to use it and then replenish it, not use it all and then go and replenish it, but just use some and just keep sort of a. It's like in lean manufacturing, the idea of the Kanban card. If you ever looked at lean manufacturing, it's really, really cool stuff that came out of Japan from Toyota. I think it came from Toyota, but where you restock your supplies. So say you have, a pile of materials that you use for raw materials in your manufacturing. You put these Kanban cards, they're called, in there. I actually first learned about this from Jonathan Dysoner from Farmer's Friend, because he did it in their manufacturing, and I was really impressed by it. But you put this Kanban card in at about when you're down to 25%, so that you're replenishing the supply before you go beyond 25%. And then that way you keep the replenished supply coming in, but then you're also using some of that stuff. And the advantage to using that stuff from a prepper standpoint is that if you don't know how to cook with it, it's going to be pretty inconvenient and uncomfortable if the shit does hit the fan. And then now for the first time ever, you're using all these dried goods that you've never used before, and they taste like shit or something like that, or you don't know how to do it properly. And so you want to use that stuff as you go. So, yeah. Just in time. MFG really shot us in the foot. I don't know what that means. Yeah, Brittany Ann Thompson says there's a whole generation that literally doesn't know the truth and doesn't look for it. Isn't that the truth? My uncle, I love him to death. He was a huge inspiration for me with music in my early days, learning music theory and studying jazz and all that. Uh, but he kind of lives in a perpetual world of Leave It to Beaver. And you guys, if you're my age or older, you remember Leave It to Beaver. It was a really old show, and it was just everything's this happy go lucky world, and la di da, everything's all good, and that's the kind of the world that my uncle lives in. And I remember trying to tell him not to take the shot, and I called all my family during when that whole thing was happening. My dad didn't listen to me, neither did his wife. She passed as well recently after 4 or 5 boosters. Um, and my uncle is still alive. I hope he lives. Um, but anyways, I called him and I was like, dude, don't take the shot. Why, Kurt? What? And I'm trying to explain it to him, talking about, lockstep and all these Rockefeller documents and all this stuff that they're just gaslighting us with and showing us straight up what was going to happen and how it was going to go. And I'm calling all my family and be like, you know, don't do this. This is depopulation. That's what this is. And he's just going, why would they do that? Who would do that? And the problem when you try to rationalize another person's motivation based on your worldly perspective is that it's totally short-sighted. Is that people don't think like you. Everybody has their own way of thinking and their own perspective. And um, if all you can do is sort of editorialize in a way the world to your perspective, you have this complete naive view, and you're one of those many unfortunate souls who took the shot and died. happening all the time now, and it's accelerating. I mean, the numbers of overall deaths is skyrocketing across the world. And when you saw that guy that leaked those documents out of New Zealand showing, some of the batches that Pfizer sent out there, 25% of people that took them died within a year. This is madness. What we all saw it. I mean, I saw it. It's clear as day. And people just live in that world where they're just like, no, nobody would do that kind of thing. And that when you talk to liberals about these kinds of things, that's often what they still say is that no, that's bullshit. Nobody does that. I remember myself thinking that at one point in my life, though it was a long time ago at this point, because I've been into this shit for so long. But a lot of people just go, no, who would do that? Who would do such a thing? And they can't get their head around it. And it's just too much to take that on. And, some of my family members that passed that I tried to warn, they just couldn't even comprehend what I was saying, even though I'm showing them the documents. Look at this. Look what these guys write. Look at this. This is right on their website. Check it out. I remember when I red pilled my dad before he died. I red pilled him with Canada being a corporation, and he just kind of went foggy. And at that point in his life, he just wanted to play golf and just kind of, ride off into the sunset, I guess. And I guess in a way he did, but I showed him some real gravy, and he just wasn't ready for it. He didn't care anymore. You know, but when I was 20 years old, he's sitting here like shaking me saying, no, listen to me, son. These bankers ruled the world. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, they literally print money out of nothing. I'm like, what are you talking about? Check this out. Check out G. Edward Griffin. Check out all this stuff. Check out the John Birch Society. That's what my dad told me. So I'm pretty blessed to have my dad, tell me those things. And I probably wouldn't be doing this, talking about this stuff, if it wasn't for my dad telling me that stuff. So rest in peace, Dad. But yeah. And yeah, Alex Jones was worrying about all this stuff so long ago. And he's been bang on. The only thing Alex Jones was wrong about was Sandy Hook, but was he fully wrong about Sandy Hook? I think he just says he is because it's just easier to say he is now. Like, why die on the cross for that, right? Like, why bear that burden at this point with what he's been through? But remember all those like crisis actors out of that thing? I mean, you could just use your own eyes. And like that guy who was laughing a minute ago, then he starts crying. It was just, was he wrong about all of that? Again, it's one of these things where there's elements of a truth and a lie in everything. And yeah. Wellness path for me says how to what with corporation. Oh, I showed my dad that Canada's a corporation, just because you can just go on the United States Securities Exchange Commission website under company filings and look up Canada. And so I showed my dad that, and he was blown away because that's proof that Canada's a corporation. All countries are corporations. It's not a controversial thing. It is once you understand how money works and how money and commerce and consent are the things that are the foundation of all Western law, or Western statute law, that is. And so it's actually quite it's a liberating thing to find these things out. And that's how I look at all this stuff now, is that they're all solutions that can help you. Did I bond myself, Curtis? No, no. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't do that. The things that work in the US don't work in Canada. And so that's more of a thing in the US that people do. Like in the vein of the status correction and all that. We don't do that in Canada. Well, some people try to, thinking that it's going to do something for them, but it doesn't. It's a complete waste of time. But in the US, status correction is legit. If you're an American, you can do that. That's legit. I can't tell you how to do it. I wouldn't tell you how to do it if I knew how to. I wouldn't tell you how to do it on a YouTube video. But there are people that you can meet in the US that will help you do all that stuff, and it's legit. You'll have a United States passport, and it'll say citizenship on it, and it'll say other. It won't say United States citizen. It'll say other. And so you can be what people refer to as an American national, which is to be exempt from the United States corporation in DC and be a American national of the Constitution, which is what America was supposed to be originally. But the 1871 Organic Act changed that when they incorporated the United States, and they created it's not that they incorporated the United States, it's that they created another corporation called the United States in all caps. Or is it the United States of America? I always get it confused which one is which, but there's two United States. And so if you're in the US, you can actually do that, and it's legit, and you don't have to pay any taxes or nothing. And it's great because it's one fell swoop, really, to solve most of your problems. Whereas remedies in Canada are right in the statutes. That's what I do. I just go right into the legal code. I go right into the law, and I don't play the name game or do any of that stuff. I just use the system. And it seems to work because, and I don't know why, I had theories about why it works. Is it because Canada isn't a dominion after the Statute of Westminster and after the Statute Law Revision Act was taken out of the British North America Act? Is it that? Is it because Canada's a corporation? It's all this commerce, but commerce needs consent. And so then you can just use whatever. Because I think in the US, you could do it that way too. But yeah, it's interesting. It's, you figure these things out, and then you go, why does it work? But it does. You go, huh. That's why this is why I just don't have fear of the New World Order, because I just go, well, people who know are getting out all the time, and they're getting solutions. And I think the truth of the matter is that it's not this big sexy Hollywood movie like I was talking about in that video. It's more just you just have to kind of quietly exit. And so it's not this big grandiose thing where F you, freedom. It's just, you just kind of disappear. Not in a literal sense, but in a metaphorical sense. You just kind of walk away from the king, and nobody knows. And all these people walk amongst us. I mean, in the United States, there's millions of American nationals. It's hard to really know, but that's what I've heard from people in the know in the US, is that there's maybe 2 million of them. And so it's, yeah, you should do it. Look into status correction in the United States. It's legit. I don't want to tell you any names of people. I could, but I don't want to, because it's kind of this unspoken thing about just keeping things in the private. And so I think, well, I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick because I'm going to take a little pee break before we go and start the space on Twitter. But the best way to learn the stuff that I've talked about in a roundabout way, because there's a reason for that. And if you ever meet me privately when we have these conversations, I'll tell you exactly why. And I'll tell you things that I wouldn't say online. But um, there is this sort of unspoken thing that you don't commingle. And you've heard me say this many times in these streams, is that you don't commingle the public and the private. And there's sort of a legal thing to that, but there's a legal and lawful thing to that, but there's also an ethical thing to that. Much in the same way that, I talk about some things in my personal life here, but I don't tell you guys everything in my personal life, because why would I? What's the benefit to me? You know, maybe you would get me more clicks if I could, look, stuff a camera in my kid's face and look, my kid's sick. Oh, that's clickbait. It's like, I don't do that kind of stuff. It's not ethical for me. So, but there's ethical and lawful reasons why you do and do not do those things. And yeah, a state national. Yeah. Same thing. That's what I meant there. Homestead, state national, but it's legit. I know people that have gone through that process, and they live with the same freedoms that everybody else lives with, without all the burdensome income taxes. um, and yeah, a lot of people are like, look up Anna von Reitz and stuff like that. And yeah, she's got some good stuff. Um, but I'm telling you, you will never get to the real gravy on the internet. You just won't. You'll never go the whole way. The only way you're going to go the whole way is by meeting people in the private and have personal relationships with those people. And you might have to pay some people to help you with it for their time, because it is valuable. You might join a kind of a club or a society or something like that, but yeah, the only way to really get to that stuff is in the private. It's yeah. Yeah, exactly. Homestead. 100%. Uh, New World Order and WF lose. I am no longer a person, just a man. See, that's not where I'm at. I don't play the name game. I don't care about the person thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the way it works in Canada is quite a bit different than it is in the US. I think it's actually just as good. I think I have a pretty good understanding of the way the remedies that work in the US work, and why they work and how they work, though I haven't done that stuff, to the same degree that I've learned about things in Canada. But um, up here, that doesn't really matter. The person, the birth certificate, that stuff doesn't really matter. Truthers get all hung up over that. There was a guy who got fairly popular a number of years ago, Christopher James. I did a podcast with him once. He does a really good job of explaining the birth certificate, and he's right. But what he's not right on is that there's no remedy in what he's proposing. And I've read a lot of his documents. He writes these really interesting common law documents, and he sent me literally hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, maybe 100 pages of paperwork in my first emails with him. And it was intense. And I read a lot of it, but none of it works for him, because he's been fighting a lot of these cases and not winning. And I mean, maybe there's an update, but anybody I've met in Canada that does the the IR the not the I look at somebody's comment, it said the IRS does the name game thing. It's just it's a ticket to prison. Um, Darren, hey, dude, you give me lots of money this stream. Thank you. Would you ever do another interview process to come do some work for you? Would you ever do another interview process to come and do some work for you to help set up and prepare for things you want to host, especially for those living in your region? I don't quite understand what you're asking me there, brother. Oh, another interview process for somebody to come up. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're asking if you want to come to my place and and talk about some of these things for sure. That's what I'm going to do on the mastermind workshop. Not the tour. The tour will be just focused on the homestead and the infrastructure of the homestead, irrigation, greenhouses, gardens, water systems, ponds, drainage systems, terracing, earthworks, stuff like that. That's what, when we do that 4-hour workshop here in June, July, August, I'm going to go June, July, August, and September. We'll do that's what that'll be. But yeah, the other thing will be more around that. So yeah, and I think a lot of that, like that mastermind thing, definitely people who live in Canada would get the most amount of value out of it as far as learning from me those things, for sure. But two, the thing is too, like, I mean, Dean Clifford's a good friend of mine, and anybody who knows, gone down the rabbit hole of Canadian law movement and stuff like that knows who Dean Clifford is. He's a good friend of mine. We talk a lot. He's been up here multiple times, and he doesn't even like talking about this stuff anymore. And I think, I mean, the reason is most people are not ready for the truth. That's the hard reality of it. Most people aren't ready for the real gravy. One, because they actually can't get their head around how something so simple could pull the wool over people's eyes for their entire lives. They just can't get it through their system. And two, they're not prepared for the what it takes to stand in it. And this guys like Dean, who did figure out a lot of remedy, don't just tell it to people because people fuck it up, and then and they do it without fully knowing and embodying why it works and understanding why it works. That if the pressure comes back on them, they fold, and then they're calling Dean to be like, Dean, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so that's why it's, being like a remedy guru is not a sustainable thing to do. All those guys that did that stuff, Winston Shrout, a lot of these guys, some of the best guys, I don't want to even tell you their names. But there are some guys in the US that are really, really good. Just because they just want to do things privately, because anybody who's done that stuff long enough knows that it's a recipe for a world of hurt if you're just handing out remedies to people, because they come back to haunt you. And it's like with freedom comes responsibility, right? Hey, B Low, thanks for the super chat. Freeze Palestine. I agree, man. I'm with you, brother. It's horrible what's happened there, and I get pained every time I see what Palestinian kids live through every day. But I ranted a lot about that over the last stream. So anyways, I'm going to shut this one down now. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. So we're going to head over to Twitter now. I'll share the link here. I'll put it in the chat. Pull it up here. And I'm going to be interviewing Ben Falk. And we're going to kind of change the direction of this theme. And we're actually going to talk about firewood and permaculture stuff now. But Ben Falk's a rad dude. He's a truther too. And he's into good stuff, and he's got a really good perspective on everything. And he's also just got a ton of experience. So we're going to head over to Twitter. So head over there, follow me there at Off Grid Stone, and put that in here too. And then you'll see, if you go to my Twitter page, you'll just see that thing here. I'll just show you real quick and actually I'll pin it right now so that it's at the top of my profile. So if you go into Twitter, you go to my Twitter profile there, right there at the top, you'll see that thing. And if you're not already following me, you'll just have to click it. But if you're following me, you would see it pop up in here as well. And so that's where we're going to be. So I'm going to jump out of here, and I'll see you guys over there. Thanks for joining me here. Smash the like, tell people you know, And I'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, dude, I forgot the from the field questions. We'll have to do that there. But you know what, actually? Let me just do real quick. There's none in here. There's none in here. They're not in the video. So nobody, we did put it up a little late, and my apologies for that. But so just know that if you're from the field member next week, just make sure you get on it and post this in there. And they're just going to go every week, just goes in there. So there wasn't any in there. The last ones I saw were dated November 30th. So anyways, we'll see you guys over in Twitter. All right. See you there.